You mentioned retail media. For anyone who doesn't know what retail media, can you give a high-level explanation?
With the emergence of e-commerce and the digital shelf, retail media networks have evolved as retailers have been leveraging their first-party data as well as their digital storefront to attract advertising from manufacturers. And so as we take a look at where brands are looking to meet consumers across the board for both awareness and conversion, retail media has been a growing capability, and especially taking some share from Facebook and other places that brands have been spending their dollars as these retailers marry their first party data capabilities with targeting, and so that we can provide ad spend within the customer experience on the platform, which is where many of them start, and managing search across the platforms. And then adding some new things like DSP and off platform capabilities. They're really cutting into other brand spend.
So essentially, as a consumer, I would go to Walmart. I would maybe type in laptop, and maybe across the top, it would show Lenovo's brand because they were an advertiser within the retail media network that said, we're going to put ads in front of consumers when they search for this. Is that like an easy way to think about it from a consumer perspective?
Yeah, that's the way that we would think about it. You've got SEO in Google. SEO as you think about the retailer platforms. And so AMS is the big one that would be on Amazon, and how you're bidding on keywords and able to be shown on the shelf, whether that's from a product perspective or display opportunities, and having opportunities to put your product in front of shoppers.
From what I read, Amazon controls like 75% of the retail media ad spend, I think I saw. And then Walmart was like 7%, which I was like, wow, that's a very big difference. And then Instacart was like 2%. So really Amazon's controlling the majority of retail media ad spend right now.
So right across the board, I think 76 was one of the latest studies that I'd seen from Insider Intelligence. And as Amazon reported in their last year fiscal results, that was about $31 billion. They saw about 8% growth, I think, in Q1. So that continues to be a big and growing profitable part of the company. Walmart is the next biggest, but yes, there's a massive gap that Walmart's trying to close with Amazon, as they've got about 8% of the market, and Instacart getting to 2%. So those three are really the yeoman's effort, and we're working with brands to be present, as that's the places where they can intersect and influence consumer decisions across the top platforms. And I think there's two things driving Amazon's dominance there. One was how early they started in building retail media and those capabilities. As I think back, I mean, it's probably over a decade then that, initially they started with brands would have to get out a credit card in order to start bidding on some of those terms and building out their capabilities. So they definitely had many years head start in building that out. With Walmart, as you think about their omni-channel capabilities and the evolution into Walmart Connect, Target with Rondell, they've probably been working the past 6 years or so to build out those capabilities and finding ways to be able to bridge the investments that brands are making from a trade perspective with merchants, for stores, with this new digital storefront, if you will.
I mean, when thinking about the transition where, at least thinking about Facebook days, and all the brands were on Facebook, and then it got expensive, and then they were like, okay, we need to go somewhere else. Is there a worry that now all these companies are going to Amazon, and now they're advertising there, and they're becoming very reliant on yet another platform that, I mean, of course, it's probably going to stay around, but it does seem like the world's kind of moving in a different direction that's going to be less focused on platforms owning the audience and having that data that maybe the brands don't have as much of. It seems like the world's kind of moving in a different direction that's not as reliant on having a platform to control all the experiences. Is there any hesitancy there when you kind of see like companies jumping from one large platform that took a lot of brands by surprise when things started changing, weren't working as well, all the updates, to then jumping to another one? Is there any hesitancy?
One of the interesting shifts we've seen is as you take a look at, total digital ad spend across the board, most estimates would say that retail media has been growing at about $10 billion a year, which ironically is about some of the declines that in the last year that Meta or Facebook has seen. There's definitely a shift, especially as you take a look at privacy, cookies, and all of that. And I think over the past 3 months, there's been some really interesting studies about the calling into question the effectiveness of some of the targeting, and has that even really been hitting the folks that it was intended to hit and what the true relevance is. Meanwhile, retailer media networks have really been having to work hard to earn brands' trust and to improve the returns and the reporting in order to compete for those same ad spends. I think a lot of retailers take a look at retail media network as this big opportunity that everybody's going to have. So over the past year, we've seen almost everybody coming out of the woodwork and either partnering to get a chunk of that money, and others that are trying to weave in some of their in-store media and try to get access to brand dollars. And so I think kind of inside brands, one of the interesting things that a lot of brands are going through is, where is this blurring of the line when stuff for in-store really used to come out of trade and different budgets that impacted cost of goods. A lot of the above the line spend, right, hits a different budget. Sales and marketing functions need to work better together to figure out what are the most effective tactics in order to reach consumers to buy their products. And the closing of that gap in terms of connected commerce also brings with it a lot of complexity and managing budgets and some of the processes that have been put in place over decades of an old way of working.
That's actually something I've been thinking about recently. So whenever we have, I'll say larger companies, when we have executives joining from very large companies, they will mention that, okay, they're trying to get the foundation right. And that's the things they're focused on. And because of course I'll pop in questions about blockchain or Web3 or kind of like where things could be headed. And they really have a focus right now, like just, get the foundation correct. And we can't even really talk to people in this omni-channel world. And I started thinking the past couple of weeks, what if they're focusing on getting this foundation where the target's already moved and they're building for a world that might not exist in a year's time? I mean, they're getting all the capabilities set to be able to talk in this new world that maybe is current right this second, but then they're missing where the larger trend is actually going that, is maybe not how we operate right in this moment.
An interesting juxtaposition that I think both retailers and brands are in, quite frankly, at the intersection of like technology, people, processes, and functional silos. And in a connected commerce world, like all those things connect, but yet a lot of times the data and the tools don't in those worlds. And so from a measurement perspective and a data perspective, there's a lot of foundation and things that continuing to evolve. And I know a lot of folks, as I network with peers across brands that are running e-commerce and thinking about tools, there's a lot of folks that have done some heavy tool investment, but a lot of those tools investments tend to be, right, the e-com team buys these things, supply chain is buying these things, and then they don't all talk together. And so stitching that together and putting together things like master data management and the related processes are so much harder to implement and realize the benefits that are thought about, I think, at the time that we invest in tools, because then it takes the people and the processes to help reap the rewards and benefits of that, to bring it all together at the intersection of being agile. But that's definitely where the world is headed, and the ability to be flexible, to your point, and pivot as things continue to change.
Hey, thanks for watching. This segment was made possible by our friends at Salesforce Commerce Cloud. If you're looking for the #1 platform for all your commerce needs, go check out salesforce.com/commerce. And don't forget to subscribe below and tap that little bell icon so you can stay on top of all the amazing new segments and full episodes that we'll be putting out over the coming year with some of the best and most influential commerce leaders out there.